everybody. It is I, Jesse Blaze Snider, the coolest geek alive. If you listen to my geek culture show every Wednesday and Saturday, even though I've been lax with my Saturday show, I promise I will get back to it. I just kind of keep forgetting to record it. So I promise I will get back on the ball and back into my routine. I'm actually thinking, though, I didn't record the show on Friday like I normally would. Everything they don't want you to know. Welcome to another episode. The Mondays, though, is kind of working better for me, so I think I may switch to Monday. It was Valentine's Day, and there's other stuff going on. My hetero man love, Aaron Sparrow, loaded me up with toys he had accrued for me for Christmas. I got some He-Man. It was fucking awesome, man. I love sculptures, toys, and Masters Universe, one of my first loves, and still, me and my best buddy Aaron enjoy it. And I burnt my collection to the ground a few years back, and Aaron is basically responsible for me having like a pretty massive collection. I've got like almost 50 He-Man already, and I think I bought 2 of them or 3 of them. I mean, I've been buying myself like next to nothing lately. But anyway, thank you, Aaron. Thank you for that. I didn't get around to doing the show, and now that I'm doing Monday, I'm like, Monday's great, because I used to do All Your Favorite Band Sucks on Monday. Right now, that show's on hiatus until I figure out like the new format. It's still available on iTunes and wherever you listen to your podcast, except for Spotify, which is the main reason why we have to recapitulate that show. We are here with another episode. You know, I wrote this intro to this show a little while back, and I only read it every now and then, but I feel like this is a good episode to give it to you. So here, before I get into today's subject, because the man we're talking about today, I quote his uncle in this opening. Okay. Welcome to Everything They Don't Want You to Know. I'm Jesse Blaze Snider, and I'm here to rip the veil off the secrets hidden by the powerful, the elite, and the mysterious societies that pull the strings behind the scenes. Together, we're going to uncover the truths they've hoarded away, the knowledge taught in the shadowy halls of Freemasonry, and whispered among the most influenced people on the planet. Quote, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. John F. Kennedy. Secrecy breeds ignorance, and ignorance breeds control. I'm here to challenge the status quo, smashing through the walls of silence that have kept the truth from the light. As Edward Snowden said, the worst conspiracies are open and notorious. This isn't just a show, it's a movement, a revolt against the darkness of hidden knowledge, an uprising for transparency. I'm here to empower you with the information that has been kept from you for far too long. So buckle up and prepare to question everything. Welcome to Everything They Don't Want You to Know. Now, today we are going to talk about RFK Kennedy Jr. In large part because I am livid. I am the reporting on this man right now is so irresponsible. It is so messed up. But of course, it is the product of a news media that is owned by the pharmaceutical industry and, the big food industry. And all of these different groups are ultimately owned by the same people who do not wish to see the changes made by this man that he is interested in making. Now, a lot of people, we're going to get to the vaccine issue thing at length, and ultimately, just to sum it up, I will say it would seem pretty fucking clearly that whatever good so much of the vaccines that are currently in use right now are doing, they are causing currently additional harm that needs to be addressed one way or another. And this is what RFK Jr. is interested in doing. He is not anti-vax, as I am not anti-vax. RFK is honestly, I feel connected with him in lots of ways, just hearing him speak, and I always just kind of feel like I'm hearing myself speak. It's not that we're reading the same books. It's just that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of books saying the same things. And he is a lawyer. an environmental lawyer. He started out working with the, I guess, fishermen and yeah, I guess it was mainly the fishermen who were getting levels of mercury from the coal plants that were off the charts. Usually speaking, you try to mitigate your mercury content by going for the smaller the fish, the smaller amount of mercury, but it accumulates in the larger fish, and this is why you're not supposed to eat like the dolphins, and dolphin meat is like really, really high mercury content and whatnot. But in the case of these fishermen who were fishing smaller type fish, their mercury content was off the chain and was completely poisonous. You couldn't eat the fish. So he has been working as like a coalition, suing these coal miners for their pollution, and trying to do something about some of these things, amongst other things. But he's an environmental lawyer, and as he said, I really recommend you watch. There's a whole it's like 3 hours podcast that Joe Rogan did with him. I don't know, might be as much as like 6 months ago now. But he is given the opportunity to lay out his case very, very eloquently with all these things and tell his story. And I'm going to sum up some of his story on his behalf just in a little bit, and give him some of that, give you some of that information. But it's worth listening to his thing. It's hard for me to listen to his voice a little bit. He's got some sort of, I forget what the exact defect is that he's struggling with, but he's dealing with some sort of health concern with his voice, and he's not able to speak normally. It's definitely a struggle for him, or it seems to be, listening to him. But he is of sound mind. He's in great shape. You need to see that motherfucker with his shirt off. He comes from good stock, as they say, and he's actually a type of man I like, type of man who's gone through some shit and came out the other side better for it, and dedicated his life to something bigger than himself. He was an alcoholic, but came through that time and really decided that he wanted to do something meaningful with his life, and this was when he became a big environmental lawyer. I guess over time, I don't know the exact pieces of his story. You'd have to look into it yourself. For me, it's about what he says. It's about what he's saying. It's about what he's talking about. Now, I know a lot of people have a lot of different opinions, but I want to promise you something. When you have children, all of this stuff really takes on a new meaning, because it's one thing to be neglectful of yourself in one way or another. It's another thing for your parents to have done it, but it's another thing for you to then do it. So, I think each generation, depending on who they come from, takes a certain amount of like pride in making sure that their children has the best health and isn't in any pain, and there's nothing going on that's wrong with them. So, I want to tell you, and this is true story here, and this is very aggravating for me, but my daughter, Logan, is going to be 16 this year in April. And that means that I have been researching deeply this subject for at least 16 and a half years. And quickly into my study of this subject, there were a lot of very obvious signs that something was going on here with these vaccines. I remember at the time, trying to talk about it and trying to, kind of have a conversation, and being met with like a loud, shut up, we don't want to talk about that kind of thing, which I found just astounding. Again, when you're a parent, things really change, especially over the past 20 years as every year you go to the doctor and they tell you that the rate of autism is going up and up and up. And if you haven't thought about having a kid or whatnot, you might not know what the fucking numbers are at this point. It's like 1 in 73 children or something like that. Let me see if I can get a number while we're here, and maybe that's for boys. I think I'd heard that number recently. Numbers for autistic children born each year in United States, and what percentage born thus. Let's see. The autism rate is alarming. And this sort of nonsense that they will give you about, holy shit, approximately 1 in 36 children in the United States is identified with autism spectrum disorder. Okay, 1 in 36 children, just period. In 2022, there were 3,667,758 births in the U.S. Applying the 1 in 36 prevalence rate to this number suggests that about 101,882 children born in 2022 may be diagnosed with autism. There's a lot of information here. So in 2022, it was 3 million. What was it in 2002? How many then? Real-time information. Forgive me, I didn't know I was going to be talking about that, but it's just a great number. 1 in 150, it was, in 2002, it was 1 in 150 children. There were approximately 4,021,000 births in the U.S. that year. It was 26,000 that year. This is crazy. You know, looking at the numbers, and I mean, you can see all sorts of charts and stuff, and the charts are very inconvenient because there's just a bunch of very simple poor man's arguments that can be made with the charts. The charts with the introduction of things like glyphosate and the introduction of things like vaccines at different levels show all sorts of different things for the health of our children, the health of the American people. And those charts are very telling, and not much has been looked into the correlation between, those two in particular are really big contributors to our bad health. For those of you who don't know what glyphosate is, it's essentially the thing that allows them to use Roundup. Is the poison that they use on these plants, and like the active ingredient and whatever is the glyphosate, and they find that poison inside of our bodies in all sorts of different ways, and it's all of the food. And then when it comes to these vaccines, the worry is about metals. And for those of you who don't understand how vaccines work, the vaccine will use a metal like mercury, sometimes aluminum, to make the body have a bad reaction. Like they're using that on purpose so that your body goes, and then your immune response is triggered, and then it basically. This is the mechanism that allows the vaccine to work and for you to be able to be healthy from polio, safe from polio, let's say. But unfortunately, like I said, I'm gonna wait to talk at the end of the show about the vaccines in particular completely. The vaccine load of metals that we're getting may be far more harmful than we realize. And what's the point of getting rid of polio if we're causing new problems? And if that's possibly true, we need to investigate that. So I mean, it's not a fucking crazy thing to be thinking about. Now, this medical industry that we are living under is such a tyranny, And you really have to look at it in a lot of ways to understand. But there's kind of like a simple way that I've been explaining it to people because it just makes it seem sort of nice and innocent at first. My father has a good friend who essentially owns the tattoo industry. He owns a lot of tattoo schools where tattoo artists are taught. He owns tattoo gun manufacturing. He owns a shitload of tattoo parlors. He owns the tattoo magazines, the ones that are like the biggest ones, and a couple other major aspects of the tattoo industry. And because of that, for all intents and purposes, he owns the tattoo industry and can control it. This that he's doing is exactly what every rich and powerful person on planet Earth has gotten together to do. The same people who own the pharmaceutical companies that own all of these medicines that they want to sell to the American people are the same people who own the colleges, are the same people who own the textbook manufacturer and the people who write the textbooks. They're the ones producing them. They're writing their own textbooks. So, the medical industry, every little aspect of it is controlled by one aspect of it. And it is keeping us sick because it has no real motivation to do anything but that. There are other more nefarious explanations, but greed is enough. And the doctors, it's very shameful to know this, but the doctors, and there's plenty of interviews you can find with different doctors talking about this, like, collections of people talking about how little nutrition they are taught. Well, why wouldn't that be? If I was the pharmaceutical company that owned the colleges, that owned the textbooks, blah, 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 what would I be teaching in the college curriculum? I'd be teaching how to prescribe the miracle radiation cures that I'm developing and the miracle pills and treatments that I'm concocting in my labs. Your average American doctor is only taught how to prescribe medicine, how to prescribe treatments. There are, of course, exceptions to this thing, where sometimes the doctors will prescribe you other things, and good doctors who don't have their heads completely in their ass, they will prescribe you other things. They've heard that other things were effective for this patient or that patient, and they'll say, hey, maybe try that, maybe try this. Unfortunately, a lot of the doctors just stick to the medicine program that is basically being reinforced over and over and over again by these institutions that they come from. And I saw it firsthand with myself. Like, I would go to the doctor, and because I was skinny and there didn't really necessarily look to be anything wrong with me, the doctors would usually just want to prescribe me painkillers or anti-inflammatories or whatever it was and just send me on my way because I seemed okay. My blood pressure was okay. But I had terrible stuff going on inside me, pain in my body and in my anatomy. And they were not qualified really to even tell me that, oh, well, it seems like some of your muscle tendons are not in really a good place, and maybe you should go see a Ralpher or something like that. Like some of these guys, they don't even know what a Ralpher is. And for those of you who don't know what a Ralpher is, Ralphers are like massage therapists who go a little bit deeper into the various levels of muscle tissue, types of muscle tissue, and layers of muscle tissue that we have that sometimes get bunched up in weird ways, and will kind of keep you from being in balance in your bones. This is the type of stuff that pulls your spine out of whack and whatnot because your muscles aren't in the right place. It's like if you're wearing a jacket and your elbow gets caught in a hole in the elbow, and you're like, oh, and you get all locked up. So I've been very locked up from injuries when I was a kid, but these doctors couldn't tell me anything like that. They couldn't guide me on that level. And at various times when it comes to minor thing, they will remove your and please, like, nobody fight me on this. It's very silly that like so many people get like upset about these things if they've already had this like surgery. But your appendix, when your appendix comes out, they just pull it out and like they kind of say like, oh, it doesn't do anything. I just never trusted this. Oh, it doesn't do anything. And there's plenty of ideas that maybe it does do some things that we didn't think that it does. But meanwhile, we just yank it out of people. We give them a surgery as soon as they have like a little infection in their stomach. Well, I just don't necessarily approve of surgery and this system and so many things in general, unless you have to. Sometimes it can be good. I've had surgery before, but in general, I believe that surgery is a very major step, and there can often be subtle, smaller steps that we can take to mitigate this thing. And my daughter had basically all the signs of like her appendix is going to burst, like this emergency or whatever. And we raced to do a holistic approach that had her better in like an hour. No muss, no fuss. That was the beginning. Fenugreek tea. And maybe a couple other minor things, but all natural things that just helped to fix the infection deep in my baby's stomach. And I was so glad that I didn't have to take her to get cut open and have her appendix removed. And who knows, maybe she needs that. I don't know. We don't need to cut anything out of ourselves for no good reason. Oh, we've got a cat that is like a neighborhood cat, but it's blind and it's been kind of just starting to come into the house. We've been like inviting it in, so it just walked in the house as I'm talking here. We have two cats that we've been feeling bad for this guy, especially because we realized he was blind, can't see. So he's like, he won't let us come near him. He smacks our hand, beats us up. Well, we try to get close to him, but we would try to feed him. We think we might like have to trap him and and take him to the vet and see if maybe we can help his eyes and anything else. Seems a little skinny and whatnot, but trying to help this cat. Anyway, I've been calling him Big Balls because he's got big swollen testicles. I just got a good look at them as he walked through the room. Anyway, well, there he goes. He came in, he visited, now he's leaving. Okay, so so you have this terrible system. You have these doctors who are not armed with with the best information. You know, the best information is naturally keeping yourself in balance through whatever the most natural things you can find are. Generally speaking, as you may know, there are a lot of side effects to these medicines. Even ones that we're used to taking, like Tylenol and Advil and whatever else, these side effects are many. And many people have them and don't know that they have any side effects. The side effects to things in our environment that are going on right now are actually next level crazy. And I don't know, if RFK Jr. actually has any idea about some of these things, because for him, the whole vaccine, to address that and look at that in any way, shape, or form, that was a difficult one for him to get to as well. And I'll tell you some of his story when I'm done talking about just the sort of the industry that you're looking at in general. But there was an amazing documentary. I forget what it was called. I don't think it was like, an official release, but it was something that you could find like 20 years ago. And it was all about what would happen to third world nations when the American military would go into their countries and set up our communications arrays so that we could use our walkie-talkies and whatever else to communicate during, say, Vietnam or whatever else. And essentially what would happen would be their hospitals would all of a sudden look like our hospitals. Like they would be inundated with meningitis and all these things that were generally considered like American and developed, the diseases of developed nations. And all of a sudden, they would have the diseases of developed nations. And essentially what it was pointing to was that all these frequencies that we use for communication are disruptive to our electrical fields. And our electrical fields are very much the most important aspect of our body, our life, our healing, everything that's going on in our world. There was an amazing book. My whole family, there's a bunch of books that tore through my family years ago very quickly, and one of them was called The Field. And The Field basically explained
that everything in our Earth reality is essentially the sort of world that you see in Pandora. In what is it, Avatar? The world of Pandora, where everything's connected. We know that the mushrooms are connecting the forest and trees are communicating with each other and whatnot. But things are even more deeply connected than that through the electrical fields. Some people can see auras. A Curlian photographer, or not Curlian photographer, I don't know if there's anybody who considers themselves just a Curlian photographer, but through a Curlian photography, a certain kind of photography that photographs certain light wavelengths, they can take pictures of your aura. The field explains that there were a number of tests done that I would say pretty much. How is this a mistake? But it proved that essentially the moment the sperm and the egg came together in any being, that the electrical field of that being was formed for adulthood. That we were always growing into our field, that our field contained the intelligent information. The blueprint of us as an adult was contained in the field. The field, like if you understand what I'm saying, so the field is holding the, like if you've ever done a sketch, if you ever done, what's the word? When you're trying to transfer something from one thing to another, and you have to go trace, and you get a light on the paper so that you can see the basic lines through, and you're tracing through. Why am I saying that? It's a metaphor, and it took too long for me to get to it. So that blueprint of us as an adult is essentially, as we grow, we're tracing ourselves into that blueprint. That blueprint is there that we see shine through the light, if we could see it through that field, and we grow into it. We grow in to the informational plan for ourselves. Now, why is that? Okay, Jesse. Okay, well, that fucking changes everything. It changes everything about the way we are doing science, about the way we are testing medicine, about the way we are testing everything. That means that anything that does damage to our electrical field is a real problem for us, because we are electrical beings. This is humongous. And I've known this information for ages now. And when people say, trust the science, I just laugh ha! The science is foundationally flawed. It's not taking into consideration what a human being is when it just looks at my skin and my fingers and my fingernail and my hair and my DNA. The electrical field around me is what's holding me together. It is the magic of the universe. It's the electrical field of everything. Study the field, heal the field, and the form should follow. And this is what ancient, spiritual, Eastern medicine, whatever, they believe this. When you're doing Qigong and Tai Chi, this is about taking care of your electrical body. They recognized how important that electrical body was, and they were nourishing it in various ways. They came up with different schools of thought practices to realign their energy in various ways. I do Qigong in particular. I had a teacher, an art teacher. I thought she was a flighty hippie at the time. But I know people do Tai Chi. She used to do Tai Chi. She was a wonderful lady. She was doing something right. I have seen incredible benefit from Qigong. We're energy beings. And sure enough, some of these things that you do that seem relatively stupid, something like bringing your hands across your body to connect the two separate hemispheres of your brain, the two separate sides of your body, to connect the energy over, and then to throw out any dense and dead energy, things like that. It seems strange, but it's very effective. And there's a channel I'd recommend. It's a little bit combo, a little bit of yoga in some of it, but there's short form bits. It's called, I think, Yochi, Yoqi, I think is her channel. And there are different bits, things for romance and things for your heart chakra and stuff. But like each one of them has very profoundly, some of them profoundly, but all of them in some way has really had an effect on my energy, and really positively, and generally kind of in alignment with what she was saying that we were working on. And these simple things, running your hands through your hair, and taking care of yourself, and making some of these little noises that are little noises. These are the things that your cat is doing during the day to take care of itself, stretching itself just a little bit, get this thing, and you hear it make a little noise. These are just natural sounds that are coming out of it in order to recapitulate. And so much of the Tai Chi and some of these things, when you see people meditating on a word or a tone or whatever, these things are effective. You're dealing with an energy field, a frequency. You are a frequency being, despite the fact that it seems like your skin and your bone and you're all these things that are all these separate things and they're all molecules. The molecules are separated by infinite space that could be cut in half infinitely. We could go into all of the in-between of everything because it's infinite. It's infinite space. You can cut space over and over and over and over again. Every molecule is infinitely far apart and infinitely close together. Everything's on top of each other and then being relayed into this matrix like a video game. Here's the room I'm in, here's the thing but it's ultimately just being tuned by my spirit, my soul, which is my auric field. But I can hear and perceive, and I have a certain amount of perception that goes beyond my body and my field. And then other people have a certain amount of perception that I might connect to. And there is a collective consciousness as we think about our mothers and our fathers and our friends and our loved ones. We're all connected through these subtle energetic field. And the fact that we become entangled with one another as our ideas become entangled and our desires and pursuits become entangled, we become intertwined mathematically, energetically, magnetically. And this can happen before you even meet someone. Your energy starts to take on a certain energy. It's the same vibratory energy of this person over here. All of a sudden, somehow, the stars collide and you, boom, you meet, you come together. Because the magnetism of the universe and the oneness of the universe is very real. All of the principles that I'm talking about here are discussed at length, an episode at a time, in the first dozen episodes of the show, where we break down the Hermetic principles and universal law, which is like practiced in Kabbalah and so many other different ways. Universal law is the laws of the universe. They're practiced by, probably thousands of different cultures all over the planet. You find just the same exact group of essential rules. And, one of them is that we are all one. And, when I bring the Hermetic principles into there, because Hermetic principles also points out that we are all a mind. We're living in a giant mind. And that is very much the world that we're living in. It's an energetic field, which is the constraints of this mind, which could be considered God. I used to call it the cosmic fishbowl. But that's where you live. You're not in a body. So medicine in general is missing major things. One of the most important parts of studying medicine and trying to get medicine past approval and whatnot is testing against a placebo. And for those of you who don't know what a placebo is, it's really worth studying and looking at very hard. What a placebo tells you is that it is indeed mind over matter. The mind matters more. placebo medicine is often upwards of 50% effective, meaning I give you a sugar pill. And the funny thing is, placebo medicine has even been studied, and there's a great book called The Placebo, or is it called The Placebo Effect? Might be called The Placebo Effect. Great book. It's even been studied when you're told that you've been given placebo medicine. And just the act of taking a medicine, you know it's a placebo medicine, but it's a medicine that's supposed to take away this thing or whatever, 50% of the time. You know, and granted, there's a lot of different numbers for a lot of these things, but but the placebo is constantly being tested and constantly being proven to be within these margins. And granted, what are they really being affected by? Because we already know what the placebo is proving us, the mind. They're being affected by the mind of all of the scientists, all of the experimenters. You know what I started to figure out after I was a couple hundred books deep into basically, not to say whistleblower scientists, but scientists who were on the cutting edge of things. People who were trying to prove things that the industry was reticent to, admit in any way, shape, or form, didn't want to test, didn't want to pay for, whatever. Well, it was the same story all the time. I was convinced that such and such was possible. But everywhere I went, I was just met with resistance. Until one day I met Phil. And Phil also thought that what I thought was possible was possible. Well, the two of us started working together, and wouldn't you know it, before we were through, we proved it was possible. Now, in most of those cases, these fringe science things, the industry doesn't want to prove that those things are possible. So, not lots of other tests get put into these tests that are often put in for lots of these things. But so many of these fringe scientists are able to prove a lot of things. However, them and the regular establishment, I got news for you assholes. Mind over matter. You proved that the thing was true because you got another person to come into agreement with you. It's a powerful, brief passage in the Bible that says something to the effect of when two people agree upon something on earth, that God will make it true in heaven. And that is some coded language there of the bits of God in the creation, which we are all bits of God, not the wholeness of the creation, the totality of all the thing, but a piece of the spark. And when two of the pieces of the spark come together in affirmation, in positivity, in love, in joint agreement with something, that it becomes true. Well, why wouldn't it be if we're living in this placebo mental reality created by the God thing? Two things come together. They're both essentially representative of the thing as a whole. The two things agree. Yes, this thing is good. So this is to say that from the fringe scientist to every single mainstream scientist testing every single medicine on the marketplace right now, the results are being affected constantly, all the time. They can't do anything about it. The more they agree upon these things, and at a certain point in time, you would imagine it's possible that the industry itself would understand this is true, and they could actually use this knowledge to get the results they want by visualizing the results they want, by being a part of the mental discipline that leads to change in reality, which people who study spirituality, and spirituality is a bad word for it, but study esoteric wisdom, they will tell you discipline of belief and faith and recognizing that there is no other way. The path of fear, the path of resistance, it all leads to the same place, self-destruction and pain and misery. So there is only one way, but a lot of time it takes a long time. You got to learn that lesson a million ways before you finally give in, right? So what I just said fundamentally indicts the entirety of the pharmaceutical industry and what they're doing. There are things that work, but anything could work with the right attitude. I mean, really just giving people sugar pills and telling them that they're on the placebo medicine, just running that as like hey, all right, instead of treating the cancer this time we're just going to give you a placebo. That should be the second thing that you try for every fucking patient, because it's been shown to be effective. It seems absurd, but that is the truth of our reality. It's about our minds, okay? So that's the first thing that you really need to understand about the whole of this medicine system, okay? And additionally, so much of the technology that we're using, X-rays and what do we use when we're on cancer, chemotherapy, and all these things. You think that's not having an effect on your electromagnetic field? Possibly a detrimental one? I mean, especially considering the frequencies that we've been picking for our radio frequencies and whatnot, we've seen those aren't very good. We're having problems. Meningitis in Vietnam. I didn't finish talking about that documentary, but essentially, now we're at 5G, 4G, 3G, all these Gs, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Bluetooth has been shown to adversely affect the DNA of the eggs in a woman's unborn children in her womb. That's some next level damage. That's Bluetooth just right there. Wi-Fi is terrible for us. So are all of the military was setting up the shit so that they could do their walkie-talkies. That's like -1G. That's nothing crazy. That's a low-level bit of this radio communication, and it is fucking up our shit, sending people to the hospital. And I wish that I don't remember the name of the documentary anyway, but the subject matter, I went searching for it recently and I can't find it anywhere. If I find it ever in the future, I will recommend it to everybody. And by the way, if you have any questions for me or anything that just you're curious about or you want to reach out to me at all, you can always write to me at jesseblaze@jesseblaze.snider.com. I love you guys, and especially meaningful questions. I hate small talk, but real shit, I'm down. Okay, so let's quickly just get into the food system. Now, Roundup and the glyphosate, poison that we're finding in our bodies and in all of our food and whatnot. This is a chemical that they've been using because they've been able to genetically modify the food to be deadened to the poison. So they can poison it as much as they want. The food will still survive. We're not so hardy to the poisoning, but the food is. These are, one of the prime reasons why people are trying to get organic food and all this other stuff. But the genetic modification of this food, there's a lot of things that seemingly have been coming out of some of these practices. As RFK Jr. is fond of saying, when he was growing up, and it's true for me as well, it was a late addition to the conversation for me. But I grew up in a time when there was no such thing as a peanut allergy. Funny enough, I was going to like a nutritionist. I forget the process, they call it muscle testing, I think maybe they call it, where they introduce different things into your electrical field to see if your electrical field loses cohesion because of it. Well, I was going in over the course of a few different months just trying to see, allergies and different things. I was told at the time that I was deficient in salt, and I was trying to get more salt in my body. And I remember from one appointment to another, I started to have paydays. I love paydays. They're one of my favorite candies. If you've never had the payday, they've got peanuts on the outside, and like in the inside, there's kind of like a peanutty, nougaty kind of thing that there's all attached to it. Maybe some caramel, I think maybe in there. So anyway, I got, hooked on paydays working at 7-Eleven years ago as like my like snack at break. And every now and then I'll partake in a crap load of paydays. And it just so happened I hadn't had them in a little while, and I grabbed a payday, and I was just like, oh man, I love these fucking paydays. And I had a payday a day, or at least every other day for like a month. And I showed up at this appointment, And this lady goes to do, the muscle testing thing, and I lose cohesion for peanuts. And she says, "Have you been eating a lot of peanuts lately?" And I said, "Why? I have actually been eating these paydays quite a bit." And she said, "Well, you've developed a peanut allergy." Whoa. I consistently ate the paydays, and I got a peanut allergy from it. And I had it happen, that I saw that it happened with something else, another thing. I don't know if it was peanuts again or if it was something else, but I saw that I was having a little bit of a reaction to something, and I realized that I was having a lot of GMO, whatever it was. And in this case, the GMO peanuts were the ones that did me in the first time. And I try to, like right now, I'm in the gym. I'm trying to bodybuild. I've dealt with a lot of depression over the past bunch of years, and I tend not to eat, and I got very skinny, so I've been trying to put on weight. It's hard for me to put on weight. Trying to eat really fatty things, and I'm actually drinking a lot of cream and half. Like I'll mix them together, and that's what I drink because I get a lot of calories. I have some issues with my teeth right now too, so it's a little easier to just try to drink some of my meals. The difference, I can taste the difference in between the organic milk and the non-organic options, and the quality of some of the products that are out there. It is really shabby. One of the things that Mr. RFK Jr. has been saying that he's going to do is right off the bat just level the playing field with the European Union and some of these other nations, and outlaw all of the chemicals that they have already outlawed, that somehow the American system has seen fit to put through. Do you know that when American candy is sent over to Britain to be sold on their shelves, they are given a separate label? Every box is opened, and each individual pack is given an individual sticker that warns people that the American FDA has said it's okay to put this poison in the food. Kind of similar to like the label we put on cigarettes. They put that on our candy that we give to our children, that we load our kids up with every Halloween. And these candies, these ingredients, there are so many problems with them. From the ingredients that are being allowed to be put in, the sort of rules and regulations on what they can tell you, what they can get away with sort of having in there and not having to tell you. There's so many things. It's rather crazy. Most of these fake sugars that we have approved in America have been shown to cause cancer. And we're all using them willy-nilly like it's no big deal because we're trying to get sugar out of our lives. Sugars, I haven't seen this to cause cancer. It's like we're just trading one problem for another problem in so many of these instances. So the food system needs to be rectified, because the food system, just like the medical system, is just like that tattoo guy, just all bought up and under the control of a select few. So many of the farmers, most of the farmers are out there farming seeds that they don't own, because these industries, if you don't know, have been able to figure out how to trademark the seeds so that they can own the seed and actually sue farmers, even if, say, like the crops, they didn't plant it like blew into their yard. If anybody can come onto their property and find that they've grown some of this GMO seed that they've made, they can get sued for it and like lose their land. And there's been all sorts of crazy sort of land grabs and things going on with these farmers for a long time. People just pushing to take control of the American heartland and all the farmland on planet Earth. They want to fucking control this shit. But they already control the important parts of the machine, whether it's all the stores and all the brands and all the manufacturers, all the important ones, all the ones that matter. It's all ultimately owned by the same people. They're a very, very, very tiny group, You know, I mean, you can kind of go look them up and get things. I mean, it's Vanguard and State Street and BlackRock are the three big corporations, and they essentially own everything because the new way the stock market works, it kind of like allows to create like infinite monopolies because they own and control all of these companies in one way or another, and they can always sort of prop them up by using the other ones, and like everything's too big to fail kind of thing. And it's just like this false system where nothing is real because everything is owned by one thing. It's just this incestuous hydra. One head removed and a whole bunch more heads come up, and they come up stronger and they grip the system even tighter. So the food supply and another thing I'll get into real quick before I move on past this, okay? And again, this isn't something that I think that RFK Jr. necessarily is advocating or talking about. He might not know, but somebody needs to express these ideas to him. What is it that I want to talk about? Yes. Okay, so there's a good chance that human beings don't really need food. There are some people on planet Earth who believe in or practice breatharianism, and they claim that they get all of their nutrients from the sun and from the prana within the air. You see animals all the time. Always, you see those videos of like the cats moving with the sun because they're absorbing the prana. Prana is very important, and it's very important in the spiritual or esoteric world and things that you might learn about, like things like I was talking about, say Tai Chi or Qigong. You'd be working with your prana, which is essentially, quantum physics is proving this right now. You know, the empty space between us is very active. It's ebbing and flowing, and it's filled with prana. There's prana everywhere. It's energy, and we're using it all the time. And it may very well be even more of a sustainable energy for human beings than most of us understand. Like I said, there are some people who do claim to be breatharians, and I was blown away to find out that there was a record at the time. I found this. I haven't looked it up in a long time, but at the time I found that there was a guy, and I forget where it was, but he was in a prison somewhere, and he went on a hunger strike for an entire year, and he didn't die. At the time, he was still alive. And I just said, you can stop eating for an entire year and you still be alive? How is that possible? And then you find out that, there are people who will fast for all sorts of amounts of time. And then you really think about some of these amounts of time and whatnot, and how little of a change there actually is in some of these people. You know, it's like one thing when you have excess weight, you're fasting. Yeah, some of these people will slim down real fast. But some of these skinny people will fast. And it's not like they necessarily become scary versions of themselves or anything. And it looks like, man, if he didn't have a sandwich right at that moment, they seem largely okay. And there's all sorts of things that fasting actually does for your body, things that happen, that kick in, really positive things, healing things that happen for your body when you fast. And fasting, if you're out there and you have pain or things that you're dealing with and you're looking for a new attempt at doing something good for yourself, attempt a fast. Look into fasting a little bit, and you can see, I'm sure ChatGPT will tell you all about the benefits of different levels of fasting, different types of fasting too. You can do juice fasts and other things, but fasting is a powerful thing. And I tell you what, just the benefits of fasting and seeing that there are people on planet Earth that believe in this breatharianism, all these different things, it really makes you think, could we go through our days on planet Earth taking less, right? Taking less. Maybe we don't need to be consuming all the time. Now, this ties in for me to a very important aspect of our consumption, which I have learned is important, and it's gratitude. We have to learn to be grateful for the things that we consume. We have to love and appreciate our food and where it comes from and who prepared it for us. Well, when you go down to the local butcher, that's pretty easy. Oh, Eddie down at the butcher, and he and his guys, they get it from the best place. It's a slaughterhouse out in, Brooklyn, and there's good stuff there. And, they get their cows maybe from fucking wherever. All right, but still, how many people are working at that factory where the cows are? How many people work at the factory where the cows got slaughtered or where the cows got shipped to get, packaged and sent to the place that was then using it or whatever? Or like, what's the chain of command? How much of that do you know? Because in theory, you're supposed to be grateful for all of that, for all of those people, all the people that contributed to getting food in your mouth. When mom brings the food, you're grateful for mom. She made the food, but she got the food from the refrigerator, which was keeping it cold. Thank you, Mr. Refrigerator. And she got it from the supermarket, which is employed by a whole bunch of people who managing the store, taking care of it, and restocking the store, all the stuff, keeping it there so that you got the stuff. Then there's the people who brought the stuff to the supermarket in the first place, right? And then from all the different places where they came from, they get sent to whatever factory where this truck got loaded up with the things or whatever. And then all of those factories where this finished item was brought from, all of the food was made from all of the ingredients. And this is where I'm going here, because let's say we start talking about something like a Snickers bar, or you know what? I've got some candy right here in front of me. And, let's check out this Reese's. Okay, the Reese's has ingredients. We've got milk chocolate, which is sugar, cocoa butter, chocolate, skim milk, milk fat, lactose, lecithin, which is soy, PGPR, peanuts, sugar, dextrose, salt, TBHQ, and citric acid to maintain freshness. Okay, so let's just think about this for a second, right? Milk chocolate. There's a chocolate factory. There's somewhere that makes milk chocolate. Sugar. There's a sugar factory. There's a place that makes sugar. Maybe there's a place that's making milk and sugar. And milk chocolate and milk and cocoa butter and milk fat, lactose. Where are you getting your lactose? Where are you getting your lecithin? Where are you getting your PGPR? Where do your peanuts come from? I'm assuming the people picking the cocoa and the people picking the the peanuts are different people, right? So you got to be grateful for the people who picked all those things. You got to be grateful for the factories that took whatever it was and boiled it down to these ingredients so we could get lecithin, and then they shipped that over to the Nestle's or whatever company that makes the friggin' Reese's, the Reese's factory, and the Reese's added that into the vats of bins with their factory workers who are adding in all the other different ingredients to ultimately make this thing. But all those ingredients came from other. Can we imagine that there's like 1,000 people that participated somehow in that Reese's candy? This disconnection from the energy that went into preparing something you are taking from the world, energy you are going to take from the world and consume, is a spiritual problem. It's a imbalance in sort of the energy of the consumption of mankind. A message which we've gotten many times before at different times in the 90s and the 80s when we were still talking about pollution back then. The idea that we'll talk about our footprint in one way or another. Our footprint is too much. We're taking too much. So the less ingredients, the more natural the ingredients, the better our food supply will be. This is something that RFK Jr. is all about. There are, like I said, I think like at least hundreds of things that we are allowed into our food supply that are cancer causing, whatever, have been proved to be bad, and we have not outlawed them yet. And where they get sent overseas, they say, hey, careful now. There's poisonous shit in here. So, one of the things he wants to start with is just getting rid of that stuff. But getting rid of that stuff, it shouldn't stop there. Looking into the glyphosate, looking into all this Roundup usage, poisoning of our food and the organics, and looking into the GMO. The GMO foods are not good for us. We really need to investigate as a nation on behalf of our children, which isn't what's happening right now. The investigations are being held on behalf of the industries that they represent, and they are not doing a good job on purpose so that they can continue to do what they're doing now. And ultimately, if you look at the long-term health of our country compared to how it used to be, to how it is today, we are the sickest we've ever been. It is shameful. We're one of the most industrialized nations. All these amazing, America's greatness. America is sick and dying. We are really hurting, and we need to do something about it. And this notion that specifically vaccines are being brought up as a means to shut down crazy old RFK Jr. Please. It's so insane. We have a man bringing reason to this conversation. Thank the Lord that that Trump decided to bring him into the thing, and that is seemingly going okay. I'm not a big Trump fan. I'm not a Republican. I'm a centrist, but I like to be hopeful about everything, and I see reasons to be optimistic. Not the least of which is the swearing in of Tulsi Gabbard, who I also trust very much, and Robert F. Kennedy. This man, I believe him. I believe that he genuinely wants to help our children, to help our nation to get healthy. He said that he has been praying since 2005 that he would be put in a position to do something about the declining health of the children of this nation. And it's really, just dig into the subject for a minute. There are no ifs, ands, buts about it. We are sick, man. America is sick. I make no mistake, anxiety and depression, these are side effects of lots of these fucking medicines and lots of these things that are in our food and lots of these metals that are raining down from on high. And if you don't know that metals are raining down on high, they're finally admitting various levels of these chemtrails and the weather manipulation, weather modification that they're doing. They have all sorts of interesting little excuses for, we're doing that. Well, they've been doing it for ages. This is just them finally talking about it now. But really what has been proven to be the case, and it's very easy to prove, you can go outside, take a layer of your topsoil basically anywhere in America right now, and you will find particulates of aluminum and barium. I forget what some of the other ones, radium maybe? And they are, aluminum is a mined element. So you don't find it naturally in nature like that. It shouldn't be on my lawn. But if I go out there, I will find it because it's hovering overhead because it's being used as a reflective frequency vibrator. Basically, it's being used to send lasers off of and to vibrate at various frequencies to change the temperature of in the stratosphere and the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. So that they can create the weather patterns that they want to create. And this is being used to create droughts and create storms and hurricanes and amplify droughts and amplify things. There is so much to this stupidity here, and that is a terrible danger to us all. The aluminum is not good for us. The aluminum is sometimes used in some of these vaccines because we have a similar virulent reaction to it. As I have said before, our electrical bodies are the most important thing. And I'm going to get to, I guess, some of this in a second. So to wrap it up, because I'm getting kind of long on my normal show, but like, it's going to be like probably another 15 minutes, but to start going towards the end. There is a documentary that I don't know if you'll be able to find it, but it was on the DVD for The Cove. I'm pretty positive The Cove and not Blackfish. I think The Cove. The Cove is a documentary about dolphins and how Japan, they would round them up once a year, and they would kill like hundreds of dolphins. Crazy. Brutal. There was an additional documentary that was like 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little longer, that was included with the DVD, and it was on mercury and mercury poisoning. It was on an area in Japan. I forget the area, but I think it had something to do with around World War II. And essentially, this area of Japan, there was all of these terrible malformed births. And it's just like the people were just being born in terribly misshapen. And it was restricted to this one area, and they basically ultimately came to the conclusion that it was mercury poisoning that was restricted to sort of their area, and they were all getting it really, really, really hard, and it was messing them up big time. The Japanese FDA equivalent, this is also part of that documentary. They did a massive test of sushi and the effects of mercury and the effects of eating sushi and sushi in your diet. And obviously, if you're living in Japan, surrounded by water, fish is a pretty big part of your diet. Well, they never quite released the full details of the study because it was thought to be too provocative and that basically the country couldn't handle it. But every single member of the Japanese FDA board claimed to have quit eating sushi, basically cold turkey overnight, when they got the depths of the results. Now, these results, I can tell you essentially what the results are. And the results are that mercury in particular turns our electrical fields, our auras, into Swiss cheese. And it breaks down the infinitely intelligent and celestial, godly, whatever you want to fucking call it, perfect intelligence of the universe that your framework is held in. That framework, you're punching holes in your electric field, and you are degrading your ability to connect the electricity from one side of your body to the other side of your body. In the case of older people, and both mercury and aluminum contribute to this in our environment right now. You know, like you don't necessarily have to blame one thing in particular. You can kind of blame a bunch of things, and it doesn't matter. All of those things should be addressed. My grandfather, Vinny, is he's suffering from Alzheimer's right now, and this is the metal accumulating in his brain to such a degree that the synapses that used to connect X, Y, and Z that would have him as a normal member of society are no longer there for him to interact with us in that way. And he is now tuned out, living the same day over and over and over again, kind of like a goldfish or whatever you might want to say. Similarly, our children are experiencing something of a similar nature when they are getting these vaccines. Now, I know a lot of older people, it's very easy for you to say, where are these vaccines? How many vaccines? You don't understand. If you don't have young children, you don't know how many vaccines they've been giving the kids. These suites of vaccines, it's crazy. The one thing that I did for my children, knowing that there was something not right about it, was I spread them out as much as I could. Oftentimes you'll hear about some of the horror stories of the parents that their kids, like, just all of a sudden they took them home after getting vaccinated, and the kid just became autistic within like a short period of time. And these stories exist, and some of these people have been paid money because they had to admit there was some correlation between the fucking thing. And there's a bit more going on here. Okay. Our young children have a empty space in in between their brain, in between their hemispheres. It doesn't close up until like a few years later. I don't know if 3, 4, 5, or 6, something like that. But this space is sort of susceptible for. There's a new kind of a different kind of mercury that they often use in the vaccines that they love to talk about how it's so good. But actually, there's a study that has shown that where they thought that this vaccine was being excreted from the body, it wasn't actually being excreted from the body. They were finding it in the brain. And that is what's going on with a lot of these vaccines. The metal, may seem small, whatever else. Yeah, it's all relative to the body that you're putting it into a really little kid, and this is a poison, and they're getting 4 different versions of this shot and 5 different versions of this shot over this period of time, that period of time. They're getting a constant barrage of these little poisons. And let's say mom's a sushi lover. Let's say they've really been fucking chemtrailing aluminum the fuck out of the area where she works outside and is breathing in these particulates as they fall to the earth all day long. Let's say she's living in that town in Japan where the water was just contaminated with mercury to such a degree that everybody was having not just autistic births, but births beyond that level. Because literally the structures of the bodies of the human beings weren't being put together right because the metals were blocking the communication that was supposed to be going on that would form these structures in their body, would form all these masses. So the aluminum, the mercury. There's also been some studies, and I didn't dig deeply into these ones, but recently this was said to me that I'd done a study on the teeth of low-functioning autistic people and found very high levels of mercury in their teeth. I have a friend of mine who their child has a lot of difficulties, and I recommended testing the baby teeth and seeing if it has anything to do with metal. That apparently you could still find traces of it there, and that a metal cleanse would perhaps be good. There's a lot of different ways to get metal out of your body. Cilantro and parsley. Also, I've been doing the sauna. Sauna is a good way to cleanse your body of lots of things. And there are other things to look into when it comes to metal cleansing. If you're somebody who, Alzheimer's is running in your family, especially if it's your mom, that would suggest she has a certain amount of metal in her body. You might have picked up some of that metal from her. We're like the tuna and the dolphin, right? You don't want to eat the dolphin because the dolphin keeps accumulating the mercury. We're accumulating it. We can't get it out of our body generally. Mostly it stays in there. So this is a problem. The brain degeneration that we're seeing in the older people in our community in America, they're being affected by us later in life from the overload of these metals, and the children are being affected by it from a lot of different places where it can come from. But to be injecting them with these vaccines so early when they're still developing, when their brain's developing, and where unfortunately some of this, in particular, this particularly good mercury, literally goes straight to the brain of these children. It is not. It's not this utopian paradise that we're told. So before you go to lynch RFK Jr. for wanting to take a look at this issue, please, give it pause. The story as I know it, and again, I recommend you go check out 3 hours of him talking on the Joe Rogan Experience. And I've mentioned some things here, but I certainly have not given you any of the details of any of his stories. But he was working as an environmental lawyer, and he was talking about how when you're suing companies over this shit, you really have to become an expert in them, because you got to win the lawsuit. That's my job. My job is to win the lawsuit. I got to know the shit better than they do, so that I can get them on the stands and and make my clients money, et cetera, et cetera. So sound logic there. So while he was fighting on behalf of these fishermen, he was approached by these very professional women who he didn't really know anything about them. They showed up at one of his lectures and basically eventually said to him, if you were really concerned about mercury, then we would appreciate you really looking deeply into this. And they presented him with a lot of evidence, a lot of things. And he dug deeply. And he said, he thought, well, perhaps I can put away their fears. Or, you never know. By that time, he had learned, and I forget the example he showed, but he'd learned that, the government doesn't always get it right. Sometimes, the local fisherman's right. And, and especially, I can tell you, when industry is involved, they often do not get it right. So he looked into the subject for these women. They, he said they were, seemed pretty rational and whatever else, and they had, autistic children and some interesting stories of, I think one of them had that experience of, just an immediate had won a lawsuit actually with one of the pharmaceutical companies for whatever vaccine it was that was linked directly to the, immediate sort of symptoms induced of the autistic symptoms being induced. So these ladies convinced him to give it a look. And when he gave it a look, he was really blown away. And it wasn't exactly the beginning of his switch. His switch actually came when he started trying to dig deeper into it and ask friends of his in the industry and like go into the industry and sort of like examine some things. And, basically all these different politicians told him to call this person who was in the industry. And the industry person knew less than he did or was lying. And he was able to kind of catch them in some lies. And he realized that, like, we're not being guarded on this level, and everybody's just kind of like passing this one down. Vaccines, it's been going so good for so long, nobody's really looking at what happened. But what's happened is the whole landscape of vaccines in particular has changed. The whole landscape of medicine in particular has changed. RFK Jr. is an outdoorsman, and he's a lawyer for the environment. I see him speak, and I believe that he cares about people and he cares about this planet, and he wants to see healthy kids. And that's what I want to see. I've been so upset to see all of the shit talk and downright lying about this man that has been going on over the past bunch of weeks. And it's shameful. He was a Democrat, and it's not like he left in any sort of scandal, like he did anything wrong. And they just want to call him a conspiracy theorist because what he has to say is inconvenient to the people who are currently paying their bills. But we need new people to pay their bills. We need the media to not be funded by the pharmaceutical industry anymore. We need the media to not be funded by, our food supply. We can't have all this shit, just be this, what's the word? Where you're going into the lobbying, the lobbyist wet dream, where everybody knows everybody and we're all on like super good terms. And the last person considered is the American people. It's like more like what can they get away with against the American people, as opposed to every choice being made from a place of what would be best for the American people. That's what it should be. I'm really, really hopeful that RF Kennedy Jr. is going to be able to change things significantly in the FDA, it's honestly, I'm so excited. I never thought we were so close to real systemic change happening. A look at the way we handle medicine and the way we handle health in this country, a look at our food supply so that it's not so fucking difficult to eat well. I mean, it's like fucking crazy. Is it the amount of hoops that I have to jump through to make sure that my food isn't poison? And RFK Jr. is genuinely interested in changing that. And I see people trying to like throw him to the wolves, calling him crazy and all that. It's just not true, man. If he's crazy, I'm crazy. And maybe I am, but we're crazy like foxes. We're crazy enough to believe that this world could be better. Don't stand in the way of people who are trying to make your life better. I really believe that he is. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Like I said, I think I'm gonna keep doing this Monday. This will probably end up coming out tomorrow on Tuesday, but I'll record on Monday and I'll keep recording Coolest Geek Alive for Wednesday and Saturday. But I might start recording my Saturday show on Wednesday after I finish that, so that I fucking get that guy out too. Anyway, I hope you'll join me for my Coolest Geek Alive show if you're into some entertainment like I am on Wednesday and Saturday. But otherwise, join me again next it's not Friday anymore. Next Monday for another fucking awesome episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. And please support, defend RF Kennedy Jr. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve it. It's really fucked up. It's like I just feel it's like he's like a friend of mine who's trying to do good for me. I'm like, no, you can't say all these mean things about this guy. He's really trying to help. He's really trying to help. He doesn't deserve to be pulled into this stupid Trump mania. I understand people not liking Trump, but I don't understand people not liking RFK Jr. So, try to dig in. Go watch some things. Go hear what he has to say. He is a person who cares about the right things, and he's trying to do the right things. Please support that man at the very least. All right, I love you guys. Join me again next Friday. Next Monday. Well, let's get used to that. See you then, guys. Peace.
There's something in the water. There's something in the air. The proof is all around us.
It's not a matter of time. Sure as the blaze in your eyes. I sense a subtle shift. Instincts I can't resist. Weary wolves in disguise.